Alright, let's talk about the FC party floor fight situation. Now, why would I specifically care about any sort of fight that happens at a furry convention? That's just bound to happen. The interesting thing about this one, and there's a lot more to it than just this, it involved normies or non-furries who were absolutely no part of the convention, trying to swoosh their way into some room parties at a convention. They were being kicked out or being told not to enter, and so a fight broke out in which the normies started hitting and punching furries, and there's a whole video with it. I don't know if I'm going to show it because, little spoiler on that, the group of normies in the video are children, they are minors, they are not adults when they were ID'd, and surprisingly, yet unsurprisingly, some were inebriated. So that's something. There's a lot to unpack with all this, so let's get started with it today. So I'm sure a couple of you guys heard about it or saw it if you're on Twitter, that a fight broke out on the party floor at a furry convention known as Further Confusion. FC 2025 takes place in San Jose, California. I was there a few years back, really enjoyed the con, haven't been there in a few years, but supposedly this year with the party floor, there was a pretty interesting fight that happened in which non-furries managed to make their way up to the party floor, which is designated just for room parties for furries during that convention. They tried getting into a party, they were ID'd, checked, told not to enter, and they tried to force their way in and were forced back out, and then the non-furries started throwing hands and punches and hitting, and it's not a good look for them at the end of the day. It's really ironic too, because a lot of non-furries say that furries are the weird ones, yet clearly, you know, being inebriated and trying to force your way into an event you're not welcome to, throwing all sorts of slurs and words that you really shouldn't be using, while also trying to physically fight them, yeah, that's clearly normal behavior. Very, very normal behavior. But I want to talk about it today, specifically what happened, some of the details of the non-furries that managed to swoosh their way in, how it could have happened, and more so the concerns going forward with non-furries, I guess, in furry spaces, which it's not really a problem that non-furries are at furry conventions, it's just that the ones that are rude and disruptive that are the problem. Either way, non-furries tried to get into a furry event or a furry party that they weren't allowed to. They were very quickly barred from entering. They still tried to enter, and so force was used to keep them from entering the party just by holding them back and being like, hey, don't enter. And then as a result, they're like, oh, hey, you're touching us. We're gonna start fighting and punching you. And so that's what happened. Hey guys, I think I found Bon Voyage's target audience, which yes, I'll do a whole video on the mime later. What a time it is to be Mr. YouTuber man. This is, I mean, I don't talk about this because I have to. I talk about this because I want to. I could very easily be like, I don't care about this. I'm gonna do a video on the first ever fursuit parade I did, which is also gonna be a future video at some point. But truthfully, I wanted to talk about this because there's some very interesting takeaways that I think many people on social media and many people that I've seen aren't really having with regards to this. And also, mainly from my perspective, some concerns for people saying that FC or the staff at the convention didn't do a good job at handling it. I think at the end of the day, maybe there were some precautionary measures that could have been taken to at least make that party floor safer, but again, it might just be a logistic reason why there might not be as much security there, or you can't really bar off entry period since it's part of the hotel. I don't know what the jurisdiction is for that. But at the end of the day, con staff came in, they took care of it, security came and escorted the non-furries or normies out. You're probably wondering though, why was a group of non-furries at a furry convention in the first place? Well, because FC is almost always booked at the same time a volleyball tournament is happening. I remember when I went to FC 2023, there was a volleyball tournament happening in the same convention space as the furry convention at the time, and usually it hasn't led to that many issues. I mean, from what I've heard, the volleyball moms and the partakers in the tournament don't really have a problem with furries. They'll come by and get pictures. Some might make some weird looks at them, but most of the time, you know, furries don't interact with them unless they're interacted with. And that also goes, ironically, for the moms of the volleyball tournament, who somehow, in the past few years, made their way up to the party floor and were partying with the furries in the room parties. It's crazy to think, but it's not profound in the sense of non-furries coming into furry spaces and having a good time, wanting to celebrate in the culture and enjoy what everyone else is enjoying. And a lot of times you'll have these other convention goers wanting to see what furries are up to. They'll be curious to see all the fluffy animal costumes, people in all sorts of attire, some people partying, and then eventually they might want to join in on the fun. It doesn't just happen with other conventions overbooking, it happens with tourists or other families or people in the same hotel as a convention happening, and they just so happen to be a few doors down from a room party happening, so they go and check out to see what happens. And then furries are usually very welcoming of people who want to come in and see what's going on or have a good time, and the non-furry just ends up having one of the best nights of their lives. And that's what I love about furries. They're very welcoming of others who want to share in and enjoy the culture, and overall just just want to have a good time. However, you can have the flip side of it, where normies want to come in to see what furries are doing with no actual intention of wanting to participate, and just want to either poke fun at them, get a reaction out of them, or in the case of the FC party floor fight this weekend, wanted to get some free booze. And that's where you have the event of this weekend, where you have non-furries trying to enter a room party, not because they want to actually party and participate in the community, they just want to get in and get free booze. And oh hey, they're not allowed to join. Why weren't they allowed to enter the party? Well, because they weren't registered for the con, and 2, they were underage. And one of them was supposedly inebriated, according to someone who checked their IDs at the door and did not let them in even though they tried to force entry. Either way, what happened with the fight? Well, a video was posted on Twitter sort of detailing the fight from a distance as the group of girls or group of normies are being escorted or kind of pushed out of a room party that they were trying to enter. But this group of non-furries, I believe it was around 5 people, ended up making their way up to the party floor and tried getting into a few different parties. The video taken shows them trying to get into one of the last parties, and then they get kicked out, and so the hits and punches start rolling out from the non-furries. 2 of the girls who initiated the fighting were also the ones to throw racial and homophobic slurs around like candy, and that's where you see the video pretty much pick up from there. The 2 out of the 5 people in the group are being escorted, or I guess pushed out of a party, some throwing punches and hits. They eventually back away once security kind of comes in, or whoever is in the red vests in security comes in to help intervene, which, you know, props to them. I just want to say again, I know probably con staff on Twitter got flack for this of like, oh, there should have been more precautionary measures. There should have been more safety. Shame on FC for not doing this. Props to this staffer and however many other volunteers and con staff have to put up with shit like this. Props and massive respect to them. I would not want to deal with these people. I would not want to deal with any problematic people at all. They probably have to deal with this like every night. Props to them for doing that. What's great about this video too is you can immediately tell how out of place they are just by the attire alone. It's not like I'm insulting their attire, but just they look so out of place compared to everyone else on the party floor. I'm just gonna call her the plaid pants girl. She's kind of like the highlight of this in terms of the non-furries and being probably the worst one there, the plaid pants girl. So the plaid pants girl turns back to try fighting someone off screen, and then one of their friends tries holding them back, which like probably should do a better job at holding them back than that. And apparently the most problematic or disruptive of the bunch ended up having a vendor's badge on them, a registration badge for the con that was specifically for vendors. And why does she only have one compared to the others? Well, context for that is supposedly that badge was swiped off of a fursuiter who was on that same floor as well. I could be wrong with this, but supposedly the badge owner goes by Lunch Gunk on Twitter. Oh hey, I know them! Oh my god, I love this guy! So what are we racking up for the non-furries here? Underage, drunk, steals con badges off of other people attending the con in order to attend a party that they're not welcome to and also not legally welcome to? Classy. Real good. And yeah, remember, furries are the weird ones. And then eventually the con staffer escorts them down the hallway, back out of sight of the video, and then it ends. So that's the fight and what happened. As for the concerns, people had a good few. I mean, you could probably imagine some of the comments or quote retweets of where they saw this video and they're like, I'm glad I didn't go to FC. This is why I don't go to furry conventions anymore. This exact reason. I knew it. I could tell this was gonna happen. If you saw some of the quote retweets and replies, there were some people who were concerned about the incident, kind of giving their feedback, critiques, and criticism on the whole thing. And some furries who were more like, oh, we should just fight back. If I was there, I'd lay them out. And it's like, please don't do that. As much as some people might think that's warranted, don't do that. Don't invoke violence, please. But a lot of furries had some very lingering concerns about this, specifically with the safety precautions or measures that were put into place by the con for the party floor. How was the group of non-furries actually able to get up to that floor when it was designated for the furry con space in general? Granted, it's not part of the convention, I don't think, and even though it was designated for furries as part of the event, I don't know if that necessarily makes it a private property or something that can be barred off from public access. Which you gotta keep in mind, the convention space and, hotel is, I guess, technically public access unless the con kicks you out, which we'll talk about that with Bon Voyage, another video. That's something. But a lot of people had some pretty big concerns about this, specifically with how furry conventions are growing more and more nowadays, and how we're still seeing like normies trying to come in, take advantage of like the furry community and try to poke at them for fun, or try and take advantage of their fun and, you know, join in, but not in a way of celebrating it, but just trying to get something from them. That's a worry that a lot of people have. And that's absolutely valid, knowing some of the safety precautions that we're worried about with it. I'd like to personally argue that the con did what it could in the moment. Granted, I don't know what the security is like on the floor before any of this happening. Should there have been probably like a con staffer up there checking IDs? Maybe, but who really knows? And the one thing to take into account is that FC, or the con itself, is very likely going to take this happening into account to prevent something like it from actually happening in the future. Because see, you gotta think about it this way. You kind of live and learn when it comes to doing convention stuff. And especially when a negative event or something like that happens, a lot of cons don't want to have that happen again, so they'll take it into account and develop precautionary or safety or security measures to help prevent that. I can almost guarantee you that there's gonna be more security on the party floor, or there's gonna be a whole different system that's gonna make it a little bit harder to get into, but also make it so that it's safer and you don't have instances like this. And granted, I'd like to argue that this instance isn't really the worst thing or biggest thing in the world. I get people are upset about it happening, and, you know, it is upsetting to see very vile people infiltrate a community in a queer space that's supposed to be safe and protected. And, you know, there were already the concerns that year at FC about like a shooter threat. So, you know, there are concerns about safety for cons, especially with people infiltrating it who might not care about throwing fists, who might not care about throwing words around that they shouldn't. And that was the case here. But I think it was handled as best as it probably could have been. But honestly, despite it being a bad instance, I think it was handled as best as it could have been. But the truth is, there's only so much that can be done precautionary wise to prevent it. You can't really prevent things that haven't happened yet. You can only really prevent them if they have happened, or if something like it is going to happen again. Called catastrophizing. That's my job. I think the one thing that really irks me about this whole thing is the absolute double standard and entitlement that I see a lot of non-furries having about this. Like, they'll rag on furries. They'll be like, we don't want you here. Go and get your own space, and then insert whatever colorful words here they'd like if they're really that vile. Or they'll just be like, ew, furries, stay away. And they'll really try to bar you from interacting with like non-furries. So it's like, okay, furries, we're gonna go and make our own space. We're gonna have our own convention, our own event. But then all of a sudden, when non-furries are bored, their good times suck, and they don't know how to throw a goddamn party for the life of them, they try to infiltrate the furry community and try to get something from it. I hate the double standard with that, because these are the same people that would probably say the same thing otherwise if they were interacting with a random furry. Ew, get away from me, you furry freak. Again, I know that's a bad assumption, but it really does lay into the double standards of this whole thing. It's very frustrating to see, and at the end of the day, it just kind of highlights that there are really some shitty, vile people out there, even if they are, you know, underage or kids. I don't know if them being underage means that they're underage in terms of drinking, or underage in terms of they were minors. Regardless, still not great. Your parents suck, by the way. Furries are very welcoming of anyone who wants to come in and have a good time. Non-furries have been welcome to join if they want to participate in the culture. We've seen it time and time again about like YouTubers who will come by to see what like the fuss is about with furries, and then end up having an amazing time. And they're just like, oh, I'm a furry now. This is really cool. And I've highlighted a bunch of these instances in the past, and it's very heartwarming to see. But then you also have the opposite end of it, where people will just come in and, you know, even though there's some irony in this joke here, they'll poke at furries like they're animals. They'll poke the bear and try to get a reaction out of them. And it's just sad to see, because at the end of the day, we're just trying to have our own good time. We're not bothering anyone. In fact, we spent all this money to have our own fucking space away from all of you. And with regards to normies or non-furries infiltrating furry conventions, they're welcome to join. Just pay the attendance fee and, you know, behave and be nice. This is sort of a lesson and message out to the non-furries. Just be chill and we'll be chill. Just come and have a good time. That's it. You know, if you're looking to take advantage of the community, we don't take kindly to that usually. And that's very hard, sometimes obvious, sometimes not, to see. But in the end, just be chill about it. I remember there was some other instance where like a rave was happening at a con, and they ended up having to board up the doors so that the normies who were trying to enter couldn't get in, which was really funny to see in like a reply post to this whole thing of normies infiltrating the space thinking they feel entitled to it without any sort of payment, and that they should be allowed to join because it's a public space, when no, you know, we worked hard to get this space. Let us have it. Don't be that guy. I guess the lesson too for furries is when there is a double booked event at a convention where some other convention or event is happening at the same time as a Furcon, just kind of keep in mind, only interact with them if you're interacted with. That's the best way to kind of minimize instigations, because some people have adverse reactions to furries, whether it's interacting with the fursuiters or people with badges or just people going out and about, or if there's like a nightlife to a con, an AD after dark event, you know, there's that too. Just don't interact unless you're interacted with. And also, especially if you worry about furry being infiltrated by people trying to take advantage of it, just keep it weird. Just keep furry weird and kinky, or at least the appropriate parts. I mean, I'm doing my part in my due respect. I don't talk about that here for reasons, but keep furry weird. That's really it at the end of the day. Either way, this situation was rough and unfortunate, but it seems like it was handled properly and people gave some good context to it. Granted, some of it varies and what actually happened inside the room party, if anything did happen. But bottom line, just don't be disruptive and we'll all have a good time. So on that note, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this, be sure to let me know in the comments. I greatly appreciate your support. Sorry I haven't really been recording recently. Honestly, seasonal depression has been an absolute bitch. I hate it here. It's awful, but we still trek on. I have been busy streaming on Twitch, so please do check me out, twitch.tv/BetaEtaDelota. Been a lot more frequent with streaming there. I'm trying to get more into a schedule, and I really want to push to grow that, so please check me out. If you enjoy my humor or anything that I do, you'll probably love it live, and I'm just trying to have fun with it, so please be sure to go and check it out if you haven't already. And if you want to support these videos further, especially during one of the worst times of year to be a YouTuber, please feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the description below. I'm going to be adding some tiers for getting to see videos earlier, or getting early access, and giving feedback on certain videos, or asking for community suggestions for either Q&As or whatever videos. You know, regardless, you know, your support means the world to me, and if you can't afford that, just a like and a subscribe or sharing this video would help a lot. Either way, that's about going to do it for me. Have a wonderful night, take care, life stay jacket, treat people like people, and that's about it.